Hello students, so this week we're going to be learning about energy, and so I have created a big book of the important book about energy. Now your parents have a copy of this, but I'm going to be reading it to you so that you can follow along with, okay? So, here we go. The important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms and can change from one form to another. Energy isn't something you can touch, but it is everywhere. Scientists define it as the capacity to do work because energy causes change and makes things happen. Different forms of energy are heat, light, sound, electricity, and chemical energy. But the most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms. It can change from one form to another. The important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms. It can change from one form to another. All energy is either kinetic energy or potential energy. Kinetic energy is when something moves, like a person, a clock ticking, a plane flying, or electrons moving. Potential energy is stored or waiting to be used, like in food, batteries, gasoline, and other chemicals. Energy can also be stored from gravity, like a skateboard on top of a ramp. But the most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms and can change from one form to another. The most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms and can change from one form to another. Heat is the movement of molecules, so it is a form of kinetic energy. All things hot and cold have heat energy. When things are hot, the molecules are moving faster. When things are cold, the molecules move slower. The sun is our primary source of heat energy. But the most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms and can change from one form to another. The important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms but can change from one form to another. Light is energy that travels in particles and waves of different lengths. Light is a form of kinetic energy because it moves. When the light waves reach our eyes, we can see them. Anything that gives off light is a light source. Stars are our primary source of light, especially the sun. Sound is also energy that travels in waves. Sound is a form of kinetic energy because it moves. Whenever something vibrates, these sounds travel to our ears and we can hear them. Light can travel through empty space, but sound waves cannot. Sound travels through air, water, or solids. But the most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms. It can change from one form to another. The most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms. It can change from one form to another. Electrical energy comes from moving electrons, which are tiny parts of atoms. Electrical energy is a form of kinetic energy because it moves. Static electricity occurs when electrons jump from one object to another, like in lightning. Rub a balloon on your hair or socks on the carpet and you can also get electrons jumping. Slide down a plastic slide and then touch someone. Do you get an electric shock? Have you ever picked up electrons from the slide and when you touch your friend they jump? This is static electricity. Current electricity happens when electrons move along a wire, flowing in a circular pattern called a circuit. Electric always comes from other forms of energy. These sources can be non-renewable, like oil and natural gas, or renewable, like wind and solar. But the most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms and can change from one form to another. The important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms and can change from one form to another. Chemical energy is held in the bonds between molecules. Chemical energy is a form of potential energy because the energy is waiting to happen. When burning or other chemical reactions break the bonds, kinetic energy is created. Chemical energy can be stored in fossil fuels like coal and petroleum. Chemical energy can also be stored in food. Batteries store chemical energy that can be turned into electricity. But the most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms. It can change from one form to another. The important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms and can change from one form to another. All living things need energy to grow their bodies and do things. Plants make energy they need from water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. Animals get their energy they need by eating plants or other animals. Plants and animals store extra energy in their bodies in the form of sugars, starches, and fats. Human beings are special among animals because they have learned to get energy from many sources. Humans burn fuel for energy. They have learned to use the wind, the sun, the heat in the Earth's core, and even the energy inside the atom in order to give them energy for the things they need and the things they want. They have learned to take one form of energy and change it into another form that is useful to them. So, the most important thing about energy is that it exists in many forms and can change from one form to another. What type of energy do you use on a daily basis? Mine, I use a lot of kinetic energy, and I like burning the fuel so I can go run outside. Maybe try doing some activity outside today, okay? Have a wonderful day.